It's interesting. Yeah, okay. So the one that we're doing this week, let's go. Hi Benji, how you doing? You all right?
I'm doing okay. I just got my son here feeding him, so I'm going to stay muted for a minute.
Yeah, no problems. Absolutely. Yeah. So can see my screen now, right? So let's go. Let's bring up our whiteboard. So today we're continuing from where we stopped last week. So last week's recording, unfortunately, was for some reason it got my voice really messed up, and that's the reason why I've not posted it because my voice, yeah, it just got my voice really messed up. Um, so I'm not sure what to do about that one again. Maybe I'll just re-record it at some point and just post it again. But that's the reason why I've not posted the other one. So this week we're discussing about configuration manager client. So far we've talked about in an environment normally, sorry, an environment normally will have Ethernet switches, Cisco, Brocade, whatever we're using. We have floor ports and everything um, within our building, and then we have computer devices, whether client or servers, connecting to switches. So these computer devices are connecting to the switches. And somewhere on a network, there's a SCCM server also connected to a switch somewhere. Um, and the whole point or the whole reason for the existence of the server is to be able to, like we mentioned at the beginning, is to be able to manage these devices. And what I mean by manage the devices, we're talking about managing it in a modern way. In other words, the entire life cycle of this device, from the very first time you bring a new device into your enterprise till the time that you're like, yep, the life of this device is up, we're recycling it, doing whatever, is to be able to manage it through that entire process. And that's what SCCM's purpose is. So you bring the device in, you need to install an operating system to be able to use it. For you to install an operating system, you can go about doing it with CDs, or you can use SCCM to push out, which we'll talk about when we get to operating system deployment, to push out your operating system images and install your applications to that device. So that's right when you buy the device. So you have different scenarios that you can use. You have zero touch installations, light touch installations, whatever scenario you want to implement in your environment. And after that, now you have the operating system and you have applications. Now, we know that the environment is dynamic. In other words, it changes frequently. So users will come. We have this new application that will make our users much more productive. We need to install these applications to everyone's machine. How do you go about doing that? So that's like now the machine is alive now. This is life cycle. You want to keep it in a mode where it's working so your users can be productive. So now they need applications deployed. Okay. Um, Security guys come to you. Um, well, we need this application deployed to a machine to make sure that they are protected. How are you going to go about doing that? So SCCM handles all that. So you're like, okay, we need to also keep the operating system patched, maybe because of new features or for the sake of security, patch all the bugs and stuff. So SCCM can do that. So it just takes the device right from the time you bring it into your environment up until the time that you decommission it. Anything you need to do on the device relating to the device, SCCM can do. But what Microsoft is now pushing for is now, because that's the way everything is going to. So if you look at the way IT technology has been evolving over the years, I think we're now currently in a phase. It's happened like years ago, it started like years ago. We're currently in a phase where IT is now much more user focused. So in other words, it's not so much about, which we discussed the last time, it's not so much about this device anymore. It's so much about you have a user, you have a user somewhere that'll be using these devices. Is whatever device this user will be using, you have to be able to like manage the identity. So it's more like managing that. So Microsoft is really pushing SCCM towards and the user-focused implementations where your focus is on the users. Okay, so back to what we're discussing today. For you to be able to manage these devices, you need to first of all discover them, and we talked about all the different methods that you can use to discover them. So, Abdul, you want to give us some methods? So, what methods can we use to discover these devices? Because that's the first thing. So, we have devices on our network that we want to manage. So, the very first thing is we have to discover them first before we can even begin to do anything. So, what method can we use to discover these devices?
Yeah, network discovery.
Next one, network discovery. And what will that discover for us? Network discovery, what will it discover?
Um, any device connected to the network.
Yep, devices, yeah. Will it discover anything else?
Anything. Computer, printers, switches, routers.
Yep, but it also discovers something else. So you're right in that. That's absolutely accurate, and that's excellent. It also discovers your subnet because this is what
The
you use.
subnet.
Yeah, because remember,
Yeah.
this is what. So there are only two ways that you can use to discover your subnet, and this is how you. This is what you use to create your boundary groups. So you can
Yeah.
either discover it this way, or what other we can use to discover a subnet. What other way apart from this one? Is there any other way that we can use to discover subnets?
Uh, Active Directory forest.
Excellent. Active Directory forest discovery, which we actually go into Active Directory and discover the sites uh, and subnets that we have in Active Directory and bring them into SCCM. So that's excellent. Thanks very much. So yeah, so we have network discovery. Anyone wants to go for any other? So Chris, any other option that we can use to discover this? I'm not sure if you were in this hangout when we discussed this, but it's okay. So any other method that you know of? Sorry.
Other than what was recently introduced to me a couple months ago, I believe it's called the Network Detective or Rapid Fire tool. It does what you guys are discussing right now.
Yeah.
That would be all that I have to offer right now.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. How about Benji? Anything relating to SCCM, which is any other way that we can use to discover? So, for you to begin to manage anything, you first need to know they exist, first of all. So, any other method that you know of? Yeah. So, I mean, because this is just a revision, we have Active Directory and user discovery, and we have Active Directory computer discovery, and we have Active Directory group discovery, and then we have something called at-bit discovery, and then we have like a video already online about what each of these discovering. That was about 2 weeks ago. What each of these discovery method, what they do, how they work, and what they mean. So after you've discovered these devices, so now SCCM is aware this device exists. These four devices they exist on your network, but it doesn't mean SCCM can manage them yet. SCCM just knows these devices exist. So for you to begin to be able to manage them, you have to install a little piece of application on them. So it's called, many people call it the SCCM client. So you have to, one way or another, you have to put a client, a little application client on these machines. You have to install it on these machines. And, and after installing them on these machines, then they can, now it's not the client itself. Now this application that you've installed on this client can now begin to communicate and get instructions from your SCCM server. Instructions like install this software at so and so date. You know, can you check yourself and check if you're compliant with this set of policies? Can you give me a report of all the software that I installed on you? So it's this client that will be doing that job, but one way or another, you have to install that client to those machines. So how you're going to install the client to those machines are what we're going to be discussing today, and hopefully doing a bit of demonstration around that also. So how do we install those clients? on this. So there are different methods that we can use. One easier way, the one that probably comes to mind is say manually. So everything in IT, there's always a manual way to do it. So in other words, on your SCCM server, um, whenever you install your SCCM server, on a directory on your SCCM server, there's the installation files for this client already existing on that. So what you can do is you can put it on a file server somewhere, whatever you want to do, and then go on this machine and then double click one after the other and then do that. Now, in an environment where you have, 3,000 users, you definitely don't want to be going around installing down 3,000 users. But it's just a good one to know that this method exists that you can use to install the client. So another method is the one that Abdul made mention of at the beginning of this Hangout, which is client push. So Abdul, do you want to guide us a little bit? So explain to the rest of the team what client push is, or your understanding of client push.
Now, once you discover the machine,
yeah,
there is one option to push the clients automatically using the boundary groups. So the SCCM will push this client on the machine and this boundary groups.
Yeah. So SCCM will push it. So what do you mean by SCCM will push it? What does that mean? Because again, this is like one of the things. So we will now try to break it down, to make it, understandable. So we know, when somebody's talking about client push, we know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. So when we say client SCCM is pushing it to the machine, what exactly is it doing?
Yeah, it will download it in the local machine.
SCCM
the SCCM folder.
Yeah.
Yeah, uninstall the client there.
We uninstall the client on this one. Okay, it will push it to this one and then install it there. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So what Abdul is saying is this. So the installation files, let's say the files that you want to install, which we'll talk about in a minute also. Let's say they are in this directory right there on your SCCM server. So what SCCM can do is this, is take this directory or this set of files and using SIFs or SMB, protocol, copy this set of files from itself and copy it all the way to this client. And after transferring that to this client, it now executes the installation files to begin the installation. So SCCM will do that. It will copy these files first of all. So we'll show all that. It will copy these files first of all and put it there. And then after doing that, it will start the installation by itself. So we'll talk about that. So that's one other method, good one, client push method. So the other one is the one that Chris mentioned, which is if it's MSI, you can use group policy. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Another method is to use the group policy installation method. So in other words, you can use group policy to push this out to your machine. And then any machine that maybe in that OU or that fits whatever requirement you've set in your group policy will run that MSI and install that. Okay. So there are other methods. Which other method do you know of, Abdul or Benji or Chris? Which other method are you aware of? So Abdul, yep, any other method? So we can do it manually, client push, group policy, any other method?
Automatically?
Yeah, so which is client push.
Yeah.
So any other method apart from this one?
Yeah. With the OS deployment images.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, in an OS image, excellent. So what this means, and so this is what this means is that you in your environment, maybe you're using SCCM or Windows deployment services to install new operating systems. So one of the things that you have to do is you have to create an image. In other words, you have like maybe a reference computer. They call them reference computers. You install some basic applications that you know that everybody needs. You install them on that computer, on that reference computer, and then you capture that image in Windows land into a .wim format, Windows image format, and then you can now deploy that image to as many machines as you want. So what you can do is you can take the SSM client, install it in the image. Yeah, so WDS is one way to do that. Yeah. So does this prep does does this prep kill the GUIDs? Yeah, definitely it does. It does, Benji. So it does. So if you, yeah, it does. So it takes away anything that's meant to be unique on machines. It takes that away. Okay, so we can use an OS image. And okay, are you referring to the GUID for SCCM? Is that what you're referring to, or the GUID of just the machine, Benji? Which one are you referring to? Because this may actually be like a really interesting. I never put SCCM inside my images. Okay. So if you're talking about the GUIDs of SCCM itself, that's an interesting one because you have to follow, and you see with all this method, when we start breaking them down, you have to follow a specific method. Otherwise, if you get it wrong, it won't work. So what Benji is saying is that does this work? Because the SCCM client itself has a unique GUID. If you don't follow a specific method and you go ahead and put the SCCM client in your image and start deploying it, what you may end up with is you may end up with multiple machines in your environment with the same GUIDs. Yeah, so that's what you can end up with. But if you follow the exact process that's been defined by Microsoft, you won't have this issue, which is which we'll get when we talk about it. Which is you have to install the client on the reference computer manually, then stop the CCM exec service, remove every certificate attached to that machine. If you're going to be using that machine, that image that you're capturing on a separate domain, if remove all the trusted root that relates to SCCM. Yeah, so there's no let me say, there's like recommendation, there's like recommended methods to installing. So Abdul, do you want to help Chris with that? What do you think? So Chris is asking, is there any recommended method? So in your environment, is there any recommended method that you want to use? And what's the reason why you want to use that method? So Abdul, do you want to help Chris with that?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so Chris is asking a question in the chat window. He said, is there a preferred or best practice to installing the client? So is there any best practice that you follow, or is there something that you try to follow whenever you want to install the client? Or what would be your recommendation?
I was wondering if... Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead with the question.
Go ahead, please. Feel free.
Abdul, yeah. So do you want to answer? Do you want to help Chris with the answer for that? So is there any preferred method for doing the installation?
Yeah, client push automatically is the preferred option for me.
Mm-hmm.
After you set up, if you have good boundary setup,
yeah.
Automatic push, it will be a good option or preferred option.
Yeah.
Because every time SSM discover a client, it will push the client to that machine and install it. Copy the file and install.
Yeah. So I agree with Abdul also that automatic client push is probably because it makes your life easier as an administrator. But here's the thing is that out of all this method, you could imagine automatic client push is the one that requires like the most work to set up because we all know that even though it's automatic, it's not it doesn't mean it's easy. So it involves a lot of work to set up, which we'll see. But one thing also is it depends. For example, like in my own environment, for example, there are machines that are managed by third parties in our environment, that even though they're in our Active Directory domain, we can't install software on them, you know, because they are managed by third parties and they're responsible for them. So if we install something on them and then it causes any issue or they get any issue, they can actually blame it on you and say, hey, you're violating our agreement. We manage these machines, you're not supposed to install clients on these machines and that kind of. So if you have that kind of an environment, you have to figure out a way to either exclude such machines from your domain completely, or sorry, from your SCCM infrastructure completely. Otherwise, whenever it discovers any device, we said first of all you should discover them. So if you set this up, what will happen is it discovers the device and it goes, yep, there you go, here's the client to be installed on you. So in some situations, not all your machines are on your domain, you know. So if your machines are not all on your domain, you can't use client push. Or you can use client push, but that's another because if your machines are not on your domain and they're in a work group, you have to specify a particular account that ICCM must be able to use to install software on them. But also, like, there are different situations where automatic client push may not work. For example, like for automatic client push, you already said it requires a lot of work to set up. Some of the work requires opening up firewall ports between the SCCM servers and the client, because the SCCM server is basically um, copying data to that client, then issuing a command, connecting to that client via RPC, then giving it a command to execute. And sometimes it's just complicated in some infrastructure to be opening all these ports between these devices. So it's difficult to get SSM client push working that way. So in that case, if they are already joined to the domain, you can probably use things like group policy. Yeah. Or you can use, apart from the OS image, or you can use a logon script. So which is also via your Active Directory. So where you set logon script. So whenever users log into the computer, it actually just installs the client to them. So yeah, so client push is probably the preferred method, but we'll talk about the complexity that it requires to set up client push. Okay, so let's go a step further now. So those are the methods that are available, just to give like a short summary of them. So let's talk about client push. So for me to be able to get client push working, what do I need? So again, let's draw a picture again. We have a switches here. We have a little computer there. Because this is not what you actually get in an ideal environment. Yeah. So what you probably get in an ideal environment is this is your layer 2 switch 1. Yeah, it's just a normal layer 2 switch 1. Somewhere on your network, it's connecting to this huge core switch. It's your layer 3 switch. It does routing, it does switching. So it's connected to it's your core switch. It's connecting to your core switch. So connecting to your core layer 3 switch. So maybe there's 10 gigabit connection between this guy and this guy, multiple of them to keep them resilient. This one is connecting your client devices. And then somewhere you have your server edge switches somewhere here also. So this is also like a layer 2 switch for your server. Yeah. But and you have your SCCM server here. So you have your SCCM server here connecting to this other layer 2 switch. But in most situations, what you normally have, either virtually or physically, one way or another, is this one lives on a separate network to your client. I know of just very few companies, and they are really, really small companies where you have just one huge network where everybody's on the same network. Even in those companies, they're segmenting their network. So what you usually have is you have your servers on a separate network or different servers on different networks, and you have your clients on separate networks. So what you usually have here is you have sort of like a firewall that's protecting this network, a network firewall protecting this network. So so let's just call this firewall 2, and this one is connected to this switch, and one way or another this one is connecting to this guy. And at the same time, let's say, actually, let's remove this one out. Let's remove this one completely. Delete. Let's remove this one completely. Let's say this one also, your client network, you're a company that wants to be secure. It's not enough to just have antivirus, software on these guys. What you think of it, you want defense at every level, so that if you try to even come into the network, it's difficult for you. But if you're able to get past the network, even the hosts themselves are protected, right? so so it's called defense in depth. So if you get past one wall, there's another wall waiting for you that you have to get past. So it's kind of like you're protecting this network. So if you get past the network and you get on the network, even this host is protected. So now you have to break the protection on these hosts to be able to access anything on the network. So this clients themselves, they have a firewall, and this firewall will be, their default gateway. And this firewall is connecting to your switch also, and then this one is connecting to this one. So this is what you typically have, like in an average network. You have your servers on a different network, your clients on a different network. Now, we mentioned that one of the methods that we can use is the client push method. So here is where we now have to start describing this. So Abdul, will you guide us step by step? So because we want to be able to understand this clearly, and it's for all of our benefit, so we understand it clearly. So that if someone comes and says, "Hey, Abdul, maybe you're taking the exam, tell me what's going on with client push. What are the parts that are needed?" You'll be able to say, "Yep, it's this. That's what's needed to get client push working." So I'm drawing all these because all these are really, really important when you're talking about client push. You see the reason why I said, even though, you call it automatic, it's not an easy work. You have your AD domain controller, you know, let's call this your domain controller 1. Here you have your certificate authority for PKI. Let's call this CA1. And you have your SCCM server here. So, Abdul, you want to guide me. If I want to set up client push in my environment, what are the things that I need to set up in order to get this working? What's the number one thing that you need to worry about?
Yeah, first you have to have an account on those machines which have local administrator privilege.
I'll say that's excellent. That's really, really good. An account that has admin rights on the client. A very, very excellent point, Abdul. So what Abdul is saying is, with client push, you have a piece of client here. Let's just draw this one to represent the client. And what's happening is SCCM is moving this client application, moving it to this, your client on your network, and executing command. For you to be able to execute command on any device and have it run successfully, you need administrative rights. So you have to configure on your SCCM server and say to your SCCM server, hey, this is the command, this is the account that you use to do this installation. So either by group policy, so you can go in group policy and configure, an admin account on all your machines. So that's really easy. So actually, let's bring up a bit of work here. So you have to bear with me because my evaluation expired for ICCM. So so after my evaluation expired, passwords. After my evaluation expired, I'm trying to install a brand new server and then recover my old site from backup and all that. So that's why I may not be able to use this one today. But I've got another one that I can use, only that I'll need to make some adjustments to my recording so I don't get sued by Microsoft. So if you give me so let's go to this one. Okay. So yeah, so while we're doing that, while I'm working on this one in the background, let's carry on. So yeah, Abdul, you're absolutely right. So we have to have an account. So you create that account, and what I wanted to show you is where you actually set up the account on SCCM. Okay, so after this one, anything else that I need to do to get client push working? Anything else?
Open the ports between the firewalls and the SSM server and clients.
Excellent. Open the ports between the firewall and between the SCCM server and clients. So here's where it's beginning to get interesting. So which ports do we need to open? So they're really simple basic ports that we need to open in between the client and the server. What are those ports that we need to open? Port 80. Any other one, Abdul, apart from port 80? Which other ports do we need to open? Again, remember
5083.
4083.
I'm not sure about this.
Yeah. So again, so that was one of the reasons why we're discussing this one, because again, remember that we want to move this guy. This is the installation files, right? We want to copy this guy from here to here, right? Sorry, to this client, right? So what protocol will SCCM use to copy these files, these installation files, from this server to this client? What protocol will he use? It's your normal CIFS protocol, right? Your CIFS SMB protocol. We know what CIFS and SMB protocol is, right? Is there anyone that doesn't know what CIFS and SMB protocol is?
I do not.
Okay. So it's in Linux land, whenever you're talking about file services, you're talking about the Network File Services Protocol, NFS protocol. In Microsoft land, it's called CIFS or SMB. It's just a protocol for storing files. So
okay.
Yeah, so it's the protocol that Microsoft uses in Microsoft land for storing files and for moving files. So you want to move files from this machine to this machine, you need to have port 445 enabled between them. So you go on your machine, so look at this. So let's try something. If I go backslash, yeah, this is enough to get me in trouble already. Got Mac OS X stuff showing on my screen. I need to edit all this stuff. But yeah, we got 192.0.2.103 on my network. Let me go to the C drive of this machine.
Sure. I understand SMB.
Yeah.
It's CIFS I was unaware of,
So
which is something new.
they are exactly the same thing.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. So it's just calling them by different names. So
Okay,
sometimes some people even call them SMB SIFs.
all right,
So yeah, so they're the same thing.
good one.
Administrator, then let me go here.
And David, that's port 80 and 445, correct?
Yeah, yes. But there's more, so we'll get to that one. But just show you this one. So now I'm connecting to this server here. I'm connected to the C drive. So I can copy files, right? And paste files to it and that. But if I go on my machine, if I do next start, show me the ports that are open on my machine. And between my machine and that other machine will be port 445. You see a connection between my machine and port 445. So the other machine, come on, come on, come on. You'll get there slowly. So I'm currently connecting to 192.168.2.103, the C drive, and which is what will show. We'll get there because I have lots of connection open. Now move on. So yeah, so at the end of the day, what we'll see when it gets there is you see that, hey, here's my machine here, and my machine is connecting to 192.168.2.103 and is connecting to it on port. So this is the foreign address, and that's Dell server 1. That's the server here, and saying Microsoft DS right here, this one. And then this is just my how DP connection MS WBT server. So let's bring up yeah, Microsoft DS is a port used ever since Windows 2000 was introduced. It is used for file sharing. So before Windows 2000, SMB used port 1. So yeah, SMB used port 137 to 139. Windows 2000 added possibility to use SMB directly over TCP/IP on port 445. So that's what we're using. So basically, when we're doing client push, what's happening is our SCCM server in the background will connect to the client, the IP address of the client, and it will connect to this share on this administrative share, admin $sign. So that's what it's connecting to. So if you want to test whether your SCCM client push, if you're following what Abdul is helping us with, if you're following that, one of the things you can test is, hey, can my server, can I connect to this client IP address /admin $sign? If I can't, something is blocking it on the way, and that's probably why your client push is failing. You have to be able to, from your site server, connect to that client on IP address admin $sign. Because that's what SSM is doing in the background. If you're looking on the logs, you see a connection to this administrative share on that server, and you see a transfer going, copying files from your SCCM server to the client to this location on the client. So that's one thing. So that's absolutely right. So that's what's going on. So you need 80. So it's not just 80. So if you're using HTTPS in your environment, if you have your PKI, you need your port 443 to be enabled. And then you need your CIFS port. And then the last one that you need is your RPC port, which I think is port 135, if I'm correct. And what do you think you use the RPC port for? What do you think, Abdul? What do you think the RPC port is used for? Yep.
For remote access.
Yeah, exactly. For remote access. But what type of remote access?
Rather, no.
So RPC, listen to this. Let's see this one from my. Can you see my screen? You can see my screen, right? So it says Microsoft RPC is an inter-process communication mechanism that enables data exchange and invocation of functionality residing in a different process. That process can be on the same computer, on the LAN, or across the internet. So this is what SCCM uses RPC for, invocation of functionality. Now you've used SMB sieves, right, to transfer the data to that machine. But how are you going to execute that command and say, hey machine, I want you to run ccm setup.exe right now? The way to do that is you give an instruction that is transported through RPC. So you can invoke a command on another machine, and the way SCCM, so that's why what it uses port this one for. So you have to be, so this one will help you. So it anything can fail at any stage. It could be that it failed when it's trying to copy it, in which case you need port 445 open. It could be that after it copied it, it's like, hey, I've copied it, but I need to be able to invoke this command and ask this guy to do this job. But how it's going to do that is it needs RPC 135. So RPC is again is some of the things that we use. For example, we go under our machine. I open services.msc on my machine, right? And if I have services.msc, I can connect to another computer, right? And then I can stop and start service. All those instructions are going over RPC. If I don't have port 135 between my computer and the other computer, I won't be able to do all the things like stopping services and starting services. If I go 192.168.2.103, was unable to open control manager database on this one. So again, so it could be in this situation that that port is blocked in between, or it could be that my main suspect would be maybe I have Windows firewall enabled on the other machine. So that's one thing. So if I'm able to connect to this machine now I have all the services listed. I can right click a service and go, hey, stop this service. So how that all those instructions are transported and moved within that uses RPC. So that's what it uses that for. So Abdul, is that much more clearer? Like what's actually going on?
Yeah, now it's
Yes.
clear.
So those are the 4 ports that it uses. So let me actually bring up the manual again, the original manual that they gave to us. So if I bring this one up, so yeah, so you see you've got yeah. So actually I've missed one. This one, RPC dynamic ports. So you need if it's using, so you need HTTP, you need SMB between the site server. We'll talk about this one fallback status point later. You need port 443 in case it's using HTTPS rather than HTTP. So this one is not actually necessary, and this one is if you're using this fallback status point, but we get there. But then you need SMB between site server and the computer, and you need RPC. And the reason is because does anyone know the reason why we also, apart from RPC endpoint mapped, we also have RPC dynamic ports? Does anyone know what that is or why?
I do not.
Yeah, Abdul, do you know the reason why that is? So why it's not just RPC port 135 alone? You have to also make sure that you enable the dynamic port, RPC dynamic port.
No idea, sorry.
So this is the reason, is because this one is actually the one that's used at the beginning for the initial communication. But afterwards, to avoid, because anyone that knows that RPC uses this port, right? If you're a good security guy, you can probably try to hijack this command, right? So what they now do is that once I connect to the client on port 135, and I'll say to the client, hey, let's select a random port that we can use, that I can actually use to pass instructions to you. So then that's where they select a dynamic port. So there's a whole range of ports that have been designated for this that they can use. So again, let's open some of this one. Or if it actually shows something that's much more useful than this one. Okay, dynamic. So it's different on if you have older machines. It's much more. It's different. Yeah. So if you have Windows Server 2003 machines, it's 1004 to 5000. If you're using Windows 2008 upwards, it's 49152 to 535. Yeah. So what that means is let's see. Um, the one I'm actually looking for is to show you exactly the reason why it's using that. So, but I can't see anything here. Okay, here we go. Maybe this one will be much more clearer than what the other sites are showing. Yeah, so just if you have, whenever you have the chance, just Google RPC dynamic ports, just look up information about that on that. So you need RPC 135, that's the beginning of the communication, and then you need RPC dynamic ports. So just remember the RPC dynamic port, if you're using older clients like Windows 2003, it's a different range than if you're using 2008 and upwards, it's a different range. So you have to enable all that in between them. So you can see how this one is beginning to get a bit complex, right? So you first of all have to set up this admin account by group policy, make the admin account local administrator on your client that you want SCCM to manage. Then you have to open like all these ports in between them. And after opening all these ports in between them, anything else that we're going to do. So what's the next thing that we have to do? What's the next thing that we have to do after doing this? After anything else that we have to do to get this working? Because now we're able to transfer the client to this machine. We're able to execute the instruction. We have an admin account that can run it. But is there anything else that we need to do to get this working?
Install the client.
Install the client. Is there anything else that we need to do apart from that? Anything else at all? Anything else in any way that you think we need to do apart from so you think that the client is ready to be installed now? So, okay, so now you've moved the client to this. Okay, let's go slowly also again. So now you've moved the client to this guy, right? So CCM, all the files exist on this one. And now you execute the command to say CCM setup.exe. I want you to run, this file on this computer. Now, if you run this file on this computer, how will this file, because now you've said this guy has given this instruction to this guy, run this command. But how would this guy know, for example, what site do I belong to? What's my management point? How will he determine that?
Site assignment.
Yeah, so, but how will he determine a site to begin with? I think the thing I'm getting at is this. So, the files that SCCM uses to install the client on this machine is a single file called ccm setup.exe. And this one actually is just a wrapper in itself. It's just a wrapper. And what this one does is in the background, it calls another file called ccm setup, I think, if I get it right, .msi. So it actually calls this file in the background. So this one itself is a wrapper. But what this one would do is that it will check the computer and see, do you have this prerequisite installed? So this one itself is just a wrapper, like we said. So in the background, if you run this one, it will check prerequisites. If prerequisites don't exist, it will install them. And then after installing the prerequisite, it calls this guy to actually now install the client. So this is actually the one installing the client. But this one is the one that triggers that process, CCM setup.exe. So if you just run this one alone, this one will just go ahead and install the client. So actually, I think if you give me one moment to, here we go. Um, so if I go on this machine, if I go on the C drive, and if I go on the um, program files, not this one, the other one, configuration manager on the client here, and here we go. So yeah, can you see the screen at all? You can see the screen, right? Is it clear enough? Yeah, so you can see this file here. Is it clear enough, or should I try to, let me see if I can. No, that doesn't help. Yeah, let's just go back to the normal. Okay, yeah. So this file is what you execute, ccm setup.exe, right? But if I go under here, you see this one here, under this client here, you see client.msi.net framework 4.0, Microsoft Policy Platform, Silverlight, Visual C++ redistributable, Windows Update Agent. So all these are prerequisites to installing the SCCM client. But what happens is the only thing you have to run is run this one. And what this one will do in the background is it's a wrapper. It checks the client. Do you have this prerequisite installed? If not, I will download all these prerequisites. Yeah, install whichever one you don't have installed. And after installing them, I will now, at the end of it, I will call this guy, this client.msi, which will actually install the client. So if you take client.msi and go to install that on your machine, you may miss out all the prerequisites that it needs. So I guess what I'm getting at is this, Abdul, is that one thing that you also need is you need to extend your Active Directory schema. That's one of the things that you need.
Hello.
Come my wife. So one of the things you need to do is you need to extend your Active Directory schema. And the reason for that is if I go on this client, so let me bring up the client again.
I'm Brenda.
Hold on, I don't think
I'm from Hong Kong.
people, hold on, I don't think people see you. So I'll need to stop. Okay, yeah. Back to this one. Yeah. So if I don't extend my schema and I just run ccm setup.exe, because what this one does is it goes to Active Directory and says, "Hey, Active Directory, give me the installation, give me the installation parameters that I need to install this client." I'm not sure if that is clear at all. Abdul, what do you think? Are you getting me, or is it? What question do you have regarding this?
Yeah, the last part for extending the Active Directory.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat it?
So, okay, I'm thinking of the best way to put this one. So you take this one now. Let's say if I go ahead and run this one, you know what it's actually doing in the background? If I run this one on this machine, is this guy is checking Active Directory to see is there any installation parameter for me in Active Directory. The reason is if I run this one alone on a client, the client needs to be able to download all these prerequisites, right? For the client to download all these prerequisites, it needs it needs to be able to it needs to be able to contact a management point. Let me bring up the slide again. I know I'm messing this one up, but let's bring up the slide again. Okay, yeah. Okay, so if I run ccm setup.exe on this guy here, which is what the this client runs, what happens is this guy will actually go, this client will actually go talk to the domain controller and say, hey, I've run ccm setup.exe. Is there any installation parameters for me that you want me to run? And installation parameters means things like, if I go bring up the client on this machine, come on, if I bring up the client on this machine, come on. So if I run ccm setup.exe, what happens is it goes talks to the domain controller and gets installation parameters from the domain controllers. So again, to break that down a bit, on the SCCM server, what I can do is I configure the SCCM server. Whenever I'm configuring client push on the SCCM server, so if I'm configuring client push on it, so one of the things I can say is, hey, these are the parameters to use. SMS site code equals to UK1. In other words, that's the site of the machines. Oh, I want them to use this management point equals to LB SCCM1. In other words, that's the management point I want them to use. Yeah, so when I configure this on this site server, what it actually does is it moves this information and publishes it in Active Directory. So it publishes this information in Active Directory. So ready for any client that comes and says, hey, do you have any information for me on how to install this client? And then they can get this information from Active Directory. So again, let's go back to our config manager server. So if I go under administration here and under my site, if I right click my site and I go to client installation settings and then client push installation. So this is where I configure client installation. Comes up with this window, and the thing that Abdul mentioned is what is useful here, because it's like, hey, which account can I use, to do the installation? So this is where you configure the account. So this account, either by group policy or one way, you must have made this account local admin on your client. So this is the account I will use. Okay, what installation property should I use? I can use any installation properties. There's a good technical article on this one. On any properties, you can say SMS site code equals to SO1. I can say management point equals to this server is called, so management point equals to that one. And then if I click apply, what actually happens is, if this allows me, if this allows me to log in to this domain controller, you see that it actually can I reboot this one? It's an option to reboot it. Will allow me to reboot. Yeah, okay, good one. So I can log in and reboot it. So what I can actually see, I'll see if I can cheat Windows from here. Let me see, because I've logged in, I think, with a local admin account. If it's going to allow me to open Active Directory schema, will allow me to open it. Yeah. So once that comes up, so what actually happens is, once I click apply, it publishes this information into Active Directory. And then the client, whenever I do a client push installation, the Client goes, because again, remember the client cannot communicate with config manager at this point because it doesn't have a client installed, right? You cannot communicate with the configuration manager management point until you have the client installed. Benji says, what contains the site name? sccm setup.exe. Benji, what do you mean by that question?
So are there not flags on the exe? Like you can put parameters in after the exe?
But again, remember, so you can. So assuming you're using the method that Chris mentioned, where you're using group policy, where you're using client.msi, or whether you're using logon script, you can actually put your own commands, right? And say, hey, run ccm setup.msi, SMS site code, and put all those flags there. But if you're doing a client push where the SCCM server is the one controlling all this, so again, this is not manual installation, right? This is the SCCM server controlling all this. The SCCM server passes an instruction to the client and says, run ccm setup.exe.
So you have to have AD schema to do the client push?
Exactly. Yeah, for you to have client push work, you have to have extended your AD schema. You have to be able to. So let me bring that up. So let's go. This one. Let's make this a bit smaller. Or actually, let's just go for Microsoft website. Easy. Microsoft website. Sorry, the reason why I'm adjusting my screen is because I'm only recording a segment of my screen. So that's why I'm adjusting it to fit the segment of my screen that I'm recording. And let's go client push installation SCM 2012. Okay, so let's go. Okay. It says to configure the site automatically use client push for discovered computers. So this is how you do the configuration. Yeah, so you can put the installation properties there. Prerequisite for Windows client deployment in configuration manager. And so this is the one that we're talking about. So client push installation accounts are used to connect to computers to install the client. The computer on which you are installing the client must have been discovered using a discovery method. The client has an admin shadow. That's what config manager connects to. So you have to then enable client push installation to assign resources.
Yeah, I just saw the line there where it said if you don't have your schema.
So that's talking about software update
Yeah.
point based installation. So that's talking about software update point installation. If you don't have the schema, but again, let me bring this one here because I think I remember during the course that this was mentioned about, except I'm mistaken about this, which is in file of at all. So let's go back. Okay. Although it is not mandatory to extend ADDS, you can extend it to simplify the management of your config manager site. Extending the ADDS schema and publishing configuration manager information in ADDS simplifies the client's installation process by storing configuration manager related information in Active Directory so that clients can receive the data during installation. You can use ADDS publishing. So you see, so clients retrieve data regarding how to configure themselves during the install, because at this point the client can communicate with with config manager, because except you have the configuration manager client installed, you have no business talking to a management point, so but in the process you join to the domain, you can communicate with your domain controller. So it says you can use ADS publishing with any installation method on domain joined Windows clients to enable automatic site assignment. ADDS publishing also enables you to provide a client with the name of the management point to communicate with, in addition to other information. So Configuration Manager publishes the following client installation properties to ADDS. The default management point used to download content for client installation. So again, remember that we said when you run ccmsetup.exe, it checks to see if the client has prerequisites installed. If the client doesn't have prerequisites installed, the client has to download them. So, but at this point, the client cannot communicate with a management point, using the SCCM client because it doesn't have the client installed. So what will actually happen is it goes to ADDS and say, hey, where can I download this content from? ADDS gives it the IP address of the management point, and it's not communicating as an SCCM client now. It's just communicating as a machine on the network and says, hey, I got your address from Active Directory that I can download prerequisites from you. Can I download them? So the default management point is used to download content for client installation. Okay, says the configuration manager site code, HTTPS port for client installation. So it's talking about all these ones that are published in Active Directory. So I'm thinking, okay, let's go back to client push where it talks about client push down here. Let's see, client push. Yep. So I think it talks about it in details there. Okay. It says the client push installation method. Let's see. Installs the client discovered. Installs on device automatically as they are assigned. Provides control on the type of system to be installed. Require an account with administrative rights on the target system. Support additional client.msi properties. Installs on devices when you run the wizard. Allows you to control when devices receive the client. But I'm looking at for the connection between client push installation method and Active Directory schema extension. Mm, so I know in the account, not in the account, in the installation properties tab, to configure the client.msi and CCM setup properties that you use for your site. The client installation properties that you specify on this tab publish to Active Directory domain services if you have extended the schema for configuration manager, and read by client installation where CCS setup runs without installation properties. So that's like, so I think
So
maybe
what does it do if you don't have it? Does the tab add it to the switches or not?
so that's a good question. Abdul, do you have an answer for that? So because it says here, it says if whatever I configure, so if I go back to this configuration manager server, whatever I configure here is published to Active Directory domain services, and this is what clients will use whenever they want to do so. So the client installation properties that you specify on this tab publish to Active Directory domain services. If you are extended the schema for configuration manager, so it only publishes it if you've extended the schema. And it is read by client installations where CCM setup runs without installation properties. So what that means is that, though, is question that Benji is asking, which is absolutely legitimate, is that if I just say, if I use client push installation method, so my guess, and Benji, My guess would probably be it does run with the installation properties, whether you've published to Active Directory or not. That would be my guess. Abdul, what do you think?
You see that second sentence? It says, "Do not specify installation properties for CCM setup.exe." What does that sentence? Since you're saying that's a wrapper, are the flags for the CCM setup.exe or for the MSI, the
So yeah, so
install.msi?
CCM setup.exe takes it and passes it to client.msi. So
Okay,
so yeah,
never
so
mind.
so yeah, yeah,
I
sorry, go.
see
Yeah,
now. That's for the client.msi, not for
yeah,
the CCM
yeah.
setup.
But the thing is, I can actually go to the command line and type CCM setup.exe SMS site code equals to this one. But what CCM setup.exe does as a wrapper is it runs through the prerequisites. If it's not installed, it installs them. Then it takes all the properties that you've passed to it and passes it down to client.msi.
Right. And my question is, if you put information in that tab, will
Yeah,
it pass the parameters on itself versus going and pulling them out of Active
from Active
Directory?
Directory. My guess would be it will pass it on itself. What do you think, Abdul? I don't think Abdul is there anymore. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You mean this parameter it will be used if for the machine not able to get it from Active Directory?
Yeah, because what they're saying now,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because
Because
what,
the same parameter you are using, when you install the client manually,
yeah, but the
you
thing
have to
is,
specify the site code and the management point.
yeah, but what I think the question Benji is asking is, look at this information. What this information is saying here is that you can use the installation properties to configure client.msi and CCM setup properties that you want to use for your site, right? So whatever you want to use for your site or the properties, you put them here. So it says the client
Okay.
installation properties that you specify on this tab are published to Active Directory if you have extended the schema for Configuration Manager. So if you've done the
Okay.
schema extension, it actually takes all the information here and
Mhm.
publishes it into Active Directory so that if a client on your network, on your domain, join to your domain, runs ccm setup.exe, they go, okay, someone has asked me to run ccm setup.exe. Active Directory, do you have any information for me on properties to use? And then they can automatically take these properties and apply them during the installation. So I think the information I mentioned earlier is inaccurate, that you need Active Directory to be extended. At least for now, I will consider it inaccurate to say you need Active Directory extended to get client push to work. But what it will
Mhm.
probably do is that if you extend Active Directory, it will make your other scenarios easier. Because now if you go on any machine on your network, all you need to do is run ccmsetup.exe and they can read the installation properties from Active Directory. So anything you've configured here, they will now be able to read it from Active Directory and apply it without you having to go ccmsetup.exe SMS site code equals to this one, because now anything you've put here is published to Active Directory. So I think the information I gave earlier is inaccurate. So, but for some reason, I think I remember reading that as a prerequisite, but I think I read wrong. I think that was like a wrong reading. I think I read wrong there. Okay, so is that clear, or is there any other question regarding that at all? Is that much more clearer in terms of the way things work? So again, back to this one. This is what is being executed. You go ccm setup.exe. So when this one executes, this one actually checks the machine and checks for the prerequisites, which are stored here. These are all the prerequisites here. So if it finds out any one of them is missing, it calls them and installs them. At the end of the process, it hands over to client.msi, which actually installs the client on the machine. So the things that we probably need for client push installation are the ones that Abdul mentioned. You need your computer account configured, that's a local admin on all your machines, and you configure that under here, which is the account that it will use. So this one is also important because if you have clients across multiple domains. So let's say you have another client on, a domain that's not Hadatum, maybe Contoso domain. You have to add an account for Contoso domain here also. And what it will do is it will use the account from top to bottom. So it will use the account from top to bottom to install. And here's the other thing to notice is that if you use automatic client push installation and say, hey, configuration manager initiates the process, copies the files to the client, executes the command, right? Now, if config manager cannot contact the client the first time, yeah, every 1 hour from then on, it will keep trying to contact the client every 1 hour. So that means if you just do a client push installation to about 100 computers and 50 of them are not available, every 1 hour it will attempt to contact those 50 computers for the next 7 days. So for the next 7 days, it will attempt again and attempt again and attempt again for the next 7 days to install the client on them, which is why if you've ever looked at the log for client installation, you probably keep seeing lots of error messages. So again, let's go down here. I think that's mentioned somewhere here where they mentioned, hey, if you try to install it, it does the installation, but then it tries to do that every 1 hour. It keeps trying to install it. So that's somewhere here. Let's go down here. You must use. Yeah, I'm not sure where that is, but yeah, the information is hiding somewhere where it says, hey, if you try to install it, if you try to use a client SCCM, every so let's see this information. So what that means is that you don't need to worry that, if the client is not available for the next 7 days, you'll keep trying. I know this is like uh, okay. So here we go. It says the configuration manager the configuration manager checks for changes to the client push installation account every 1 hour. No, not this one. This is 2007, I think. CM 2012 client push installation. Okay, this one. So I just want to show you because that information is really important. Yeah. So if the site server cannot contact the client computer or starts the setup process, it automatically repeats the installation attempt every hour for up to 7 days until it succeeds. So it just keeps trying to install it. Eventually, if till maybe you fix the issue that's plaguing it until it succeeds. Okay, so let's do a quick bit of that. So that's for client push installation. The other method is using group policy, and like what Chris mentioned. So it's just the normal standard way that we use group policy for installation. So, but in this case, because group policy doesn't accept .exe, group policy only accepts .msi, right? But the thing is, remember that CCM setup.exe is a wrapper, right? But now, if you go ahead and pass just this client.msi to group policy, it's only going to try to install the client. What about the prerequisites? What if they are missing? So which is why Microsoft has provided another one. So if you're going to be using group policies, you have to use something else. You can't use the one that we saw before. You have to use so if I go, let's just search this one and search for CM setup. So should come up with, yeah. So there's another file that's provided by Microsoft here, this one. CCM setup.msi. You know, you have CCM setup.exe, right? Which is the one it runs. If you're going to be using group policy, this is the one you use, CCM setup.msi, because group policy only accepts .msi. So use CCM setup.msi to add that, and then that will act as a wrapper. So what will happen is if you have group policy and then you've added CCM setup.msi, that's where your Active Directory comes into play. It comes into play a lot there, because what will happen is once you run CCM setup, once the machine, a user logs into the machine or whatever, the policy applies, it executes CCM setup.msi. Now it has to get the properties of the installation, which you can't pass in group policy. So where will it get the properties from? There are two ways it can get the properties. It can either get the properties from what you've configured in Active Directory because it pushed it to Active Directory, or you have to manually load these ones. You have to manually load this configuration manager template and then use this to configure the properties. So those are the options that you have with that one. So, but just realize that if you're using group policy, you don't use CCM setup dot exe. You use CCM setup dot msi to do that process. So apart from that, the only other interesting process I can see, so there's a process about login script. So if you're using login script, which is you go under, a particular user account or computer account, and then you say, hey, whenever you're logging in, run the script. So you can use that method. But then the question that usually comes up is if it will allow me to open Active Directory users and services. So the question that will come up is, what about I don't want to manage. I want to manage, not, yeah, it wants me to just restart. So let's restart. Yeah. So for logon script is because otherwise what will happen is if I say put under a user's account or computer account, I say anytime there's a login, anytime this user logs in, execute this batch script, and the batch script is pointing to CCM setup. So if I go, let's bring up another little paint one again. So if I say, let's clear out all this. So in the logon script, in the little batch file that I'm using, I'm saying if you run CCM setup dot exe SMS site code equals to UK1 management point equals to LB SCCM1. So I can say run that. But what happens now is every time that user logs in, it executes this command. And it basically installs the client, and then the user logs out and logs back in, and it installs the client, and then the user logs on and logs back in, and it installs the client again. So there's a particular switch that you have to use if you're using logon script method. You have to use this switch /logon. So if you don't use that switch, you'll just keep getting it, installing every single time the user logs in. So /logon, what it will do is that it will check if a SSM client is already installed. If any version of SSM client is already installed, it's not going to go ahead and install this one. It's going to stop. So if you're going to be using login script, use this method. And so we've talked about three methods. We've talked about client push. We've talked about group policy. And we've talked about this one, which is logon script. Another one is the image one. So if you're going to be doing that, so an image one is actually not bad. I don't think it's like a bad idea, too bad idea, because what you can do is, for example, like most people in this environment or in the modern environment will use virtual machine templates to provision new servers. So if you need a new server in your environment, if you have a virtual infrastructure, if it's a VMware infrastructure, you probably just go clone a template, right? You already have a template, just go right click, clone template, you have a brand new server available within a few minutes. So then after that, what you probably now have to start doing is now we have to install a antivirus software. Okay, we have to install this other one after we've just cloned this template. We have to install this other one. Then you now keep adding to that list of, yeah, we also have to install SCCM client. Then we have to configure Splunk. Then we have to configure this one. So at the end of the day, your SAPO, to create your server only takes you 5 minutes. To get it ready so you can actually start using it takes lots of hours, because now you have to install updates, you have to add this client, add this other client, add this other client. So it's actually not a bad idea to say in your VM template, in that particular image, you're going to have the SCCM client installed. So which is the one that Abdul mentioned about, you have the client installed within an image. But this one, you need to be careful so that you won't face the issue that Benji mentioned about the GUID of the SCCM client, where if you get that wrong, you now have multiple clients in your SCCM environment with the same GUID. So you have to follow the exact process that Microsoft has defined, otherwise you get into trouble on this one. And this is the process. It's I would say, I won't say it's straightforward, but it's not that difficult. Okay, so look at this. Number one, install the configuration manager client manually on your reference computer. So you basically go, double click ccm setup.exe. Again, remember, if your reference computer is joined to the domain, what will it do at this point? It will automatically talk to the domain, right? So you have to be careful that your reference computer is not joined to the domain, because if it's joined to the domain and you've already published this information to the domain, at this point, it will start assigning itself to a site. And one of the things that it mentions here is, do not specify the client's site code. But if you have that published in Active Directory, if you run this, it's going to talk to Active Directory and get the site code, and it's going to assign itself to a site. So that's one thing to avoid. Make sure your reference computer is not joined to the domain. Run ccm setup.exe. Don't specify any site code. Then after that, stop the SCCM client service. SMS agent host, stop that service. You can use this command, net stop ccm exec. That stops it. Yeah. Then go into your. Okay, yeah. Carry on, Benji.
So the reason that you make sure that it's not running, it will finish installing all the prerequisites on your reference computer first.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No. So it's okay if it finishes
you wait
installing.
for the background task to finish running and installing all the prerequisites on your system image.
Yep. So once you make sure that it's finished installing, then you stop it. So because what happens is, if I run ccm setup.exe, if you go under details, you actually see ccm setup.exe running. So once it finishes, then you see that change to ccm exec.exe. So after that finishes, just stop it, because otherwise in the background it's going to be doing all manner of communication trying to find a management point. It's going to be talking to, it goes through a process. We'll get to that in, I think that's 2 modules away, how it finds a management point. It's going to try to contact Active Directory. Oh, there's no information in Active Directory for management point. It's going to try to contact DNS, any management point information that you have. If not DNS, it's going to try to contact your Wins server if you're still using Wins, and says, hey, Wins, you got any management point information for me? It's going to be going through all these steps. So you stop that service. You go to your computer store, remove any certificates that referencing the computer. Of course, this is like even normal. Like if you're going to be building any image, you don't want computer certificates that's been issued to it from Active Directory or something. But again, I recommend the machine is not even joined to the domain at all. Begin with. So remove any certificates. So if you plan to install the clients in a configuration manager 2012 hierarchy different from the master image, remove the trusted root key. So what that's talking about is the your trusted certificate. If you're going to be using this in a different domain, not in the if you happen to have joined this computer to the domain and you're going to be using this in a separate domain, you have to remove the trusted root of the domain that you're currently on. But if you don't have it joined to your domain anyway, or if you're going to be using this in the same domain that you're creating it, you may not need to do step 4. Then after that, you can run sysprep.exe, yeah, and then now whenever you right click your VMware image or whatever image you're cloning, and you click clone, that's one step gone. You don't have to say, oh, after I've cloned this one, now I have to go ahead and install the client to it, or or whatever. The client is already there. So all you need to do is join it to the domain, it gets a certificate. Once the machine comes alive, CCM exec.exe will start, and it will start the process that we talked about. Where's my management point? Active Directory, any information for me, on DNS, any information for me, and then it's going to configure itself automatically. But this is a good warning. Failure to follow this procedure will result in multiple computers with the same configuration manager ID in the site. So whatever you do, install it manually, recommended not join to the domain. After installing it, stop the service, remove any computer certificates, then go ahead and do your sysprep. And then that way it's included within the image itself. And I think the final method that we want, so I actually wanted to show you before how to install the client on a Mac, but I don't think we have time for that again today. Benji smiling. No, actually, if I let me show you. I've got my Mac, my little VirtualBox Mac here that I use for practicing configuration manager. If it allows me to connect. Not sure why this one is not my. Do I have? Oh, okay. Here we go. Yeah, if it allows me to connect, so I've got my config manager. Again, I'm resizing it because of the recording to avoid. So if I scroll down and open my VirtualBox, so I have the Mac that I used to. There we go. Here's my Mac. So it's currently joined to my my internal config manager infrastructure, and I've actually deployed software to it. Use preference list to manage it, just to test, what the features SCCM has for a Mac, just to test it. So this produced by this a variation of the Macintosh, called the Macintosh, produced by this awesome guy called Nivesh. And so that allows me to run Mac OS X in VirtualBox. And then that allows me to practice all the config manager features of a Mac. So what can SCCM do for a Mac? So for the Mac, unfortunately, the only method you can use for now is manual installation. So that's the only method you can use. So what you probably do is you put the SCCM client, so again, the SCCM client, you have to download it from Microsoft website for a Mac. So you go to Microsoft website, download it. If I still remember my password, probably not remember my password. So yeah, so I have to go to Microsoft website. Oh, okay, here we go. I have it right. So I download the SCCM client for the Mac, and this is what it looks like if it comes up. So it's a bit much more dumber than the one for Windows. Okay, there's no need to go there that way. I can go on the and go on the system preferences, and I'll see config manager somewhere down here. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. So connected to my config manager server internally. That's the GUID of the machine. So yeah, and then I can push software to it. I can use compliance items or configuration item to manage compliance using preference lists and shell scripts. And yeah, I'll say it's basic. The features that it provides compared to what it provides for Windows, it's basic on the Mac, but at least it's still configuration for the poor man. So rather than you going to spend like thousands of dollars or pounds on Casper or some of these Mac specific configuration manager applications. If you don't have that much money, you can just at least use config manager. No problems, no problems, Chris. Yeah. So I think that's probably where we stop today. But at least I hope that was useful in some way. So Abdul, any question regarding what we've discussed today? Abdul, Benji, Chris, any questions?
I don't have any questions. It was an excellent presentation as always. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah. So Abdul, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. What about Benji? Any questions at all?
Nope. Let's see. I used to do imaging for my last company, but another person did the SCCM pushes. So I would find when I was building my reference images that SCCM would sneak into the computer if I joined it to the domain to install Outlook or
Yeah.
Windows. If I would install Outlook or Office,
Yeah.
then it would jump in there. So then I would have to go in and uninstall SCCM
Yeah.
or go in and delete information out of there.
Mhm.
And then we would run sysprep and save the image. So that was
Yep.
back in XP.
Yeah.
In Windows 7 days, I used a Microsoft Deployment Toolkit for all of my deployments.
Yeah.
And then I just kept the machine off the domain and installed everything
Yeah.
through Microsoft Deployment Toolkit instead of our SCCM was the older version. Was 2008 was the
2007. Yeah.
or 07, yeah. So we had 07, and I was always fighting back and forth with admin when I was building my images to try and get it off. And then sometimes we had the duplicate thing that was warned on there.
Yeah. Yeah. So what will happen in that case is they've enabled this option here. Enable automatic site-wide client push installation. So if you enable this option here, and then you can even say, hey, okay, if you want to exclude your domain controllers, never install on domain controllers. I can even say, go ahead and install on domain controllers. What that means is any machine that joins your domain will get discovered by ICCM, and instantly ICCM will attempt to install the client on them, which is why it was jumping in. So the moment the machine is like, oh, ICCM is like, yeah, I found you. Here's the client. And SCM tries to install the client on it. Now, in my own environment, I would very much love to enable this, but I have to do some cleanup first because we have servers in our environment that we cannot, if we install the SCM client on them, we're breaking our agreement.
Yeah, he didn't have permission to install on the servers. The systems admins team, network team would not let him install SCCM on the server. So we only used it for our client workstation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably what was happening. I asked him at the time, I was like, when does it get installed? Is it on a schedule? Is it when you join the domain or whatever? So I was always trying to figure out how it got installed, when it got installed. Sometimes it would be there, sometimes it wouldn't. So that was part of my imaging checklist was
which is why you were scared of the imaging one, right? Of putting it in the image.
Yeah.
Because you've had that experience with the imaging one. So to me, like, I won't use the imaging one for client. I'll probably use it for VMware templates. That's it. Because I've been in situations where I have to provision a server, and the amount of work I have to do afterwards is crazy. I have to put the antivirus on it, enable this function on it, put this Splunk client on it, configure it to do this one. It's like, so what's the point of all these templates? If I clone this within 5 minutes, but after 2 hours, I'm still getting the server ready. I just want to be able to clone it. Boom, I'm ready to work. So, yeah. Okay, no problems, man. I'll see you again next week. We'll continue again from where we stopped next week.
I just wanted to mention I passed my 7410 on Friday.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Congratulations.
I got a job today.
Wow.
I got a systems admin position at a small company that they own fiber optic networks here.
Yep.
And they roll out fiber optics, but they've hired me to manage their VMware Linux internal Windows servers and Exchange servers internally, and then do network consulting in the future. So
Amazing.
it's
Amazing.
a good week. I
Yeah.
passed my 7410 on my 41st birthday, and then I got a job within a week. So
Did you pass in your 7410? Did it contribute to you getting the job that you got?
I don't know. I emailed, my interview was last Wednesday,
Yeah.
and then I emailed them on Friday,
Mhm.
and I never got a reply back. And then they told me in the interview last Wednesday they would email me this Wednesday.
Yeah.
They said they were hiring 2 admins, and they only had 3 candidates. So I was really like, if I don't get this job, I'm the worst of the 3. And then at 4:45 yesterday, I got an
Yep.
email
Wow. Nice one.
specifying what the job was
Yeah.
and if I understood that and agreed. And then, I agreed and, talked salary and things like that. So
Yeah.
I've been in communication with the guy
Excellent.
that does their enrollment and with the owner, and
Excellent.
everything was good. So,
Yeah.
and it's only a 15-minute commute, so I don't have to drive an hour to Indianapolis. So I'm happy.
Nice one. Nice.
Question, David?
Yeah, sure.
A friend of mine,
Mhm.
I was trying to get him to come into here. I just invited him to the group, but he sent me a message earlier. I think he's taking care of his family right now and cooking.
Yep.
But he was asking how you would advise pushing a VPN client without killing the VPN. Is there like a maintenance window? Like say for like a Cisco VPN client or something.
Mhm.
If they're already connected via a VPN,
Mhm.
how would you package a piece of software to install the VPN but not kick the user off?
So you want to
Like-
upgrade it so it's already installed, or
Yeah.
you want to upgrade it to another version?
So can you set like a parameter to install like in a maintenance window or to shut down the machine or something like that?
So you can basically do almost anything you want if it's a Windows client on SCCM. If you want, you can say shut this one down, stop this service before you do this. If you can go as far as using a task sequence to even make the logic as complicated as you want with SCCM. But for me, I would say it's the best thing is to do it with a test. So if I were to have if I'm the one that have that kind of a task to do, what I'll do is I'll get a machine in my environment, in the office right next to me, connect it to maybe my phone Wi-Fi or something. After connecting it to my phone Wi-Fi, connect to the VPN, and then do any test I want to do on there. Yeah, so I'll say that's the best thing is to whatever it does, just get a test machine next
Sure.
to you, connect it to the Wi-Fi with the VPN client, package the application the way you want to install, and then push it out and then see what happens. So you learn a lot that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah.
He said he might start coming to these SCCMs. He's moving roles within the year, so he's trying to learn as much about SCCM. He uses it a lot, but he just had that question. So.
Okay. Or Abdul, do you have any other advice for him? Any other thing that you advise the guy?
For client push, for install a package.
Yeah, like if a Cisco VPN client, like installing it at shutdown or installing it at startup or something to where it's not killing the existing, it's going to cut the connection. It's going to cut the connection. So, you've got to get all the bits on the machine, stuff like that.
Actually, I didn't try to do that, so I have no idea.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you can do that. You can set it so in SCCM, which when we get to application management, we'll talk about that. So you can set maintenance windows, or you can set a deadline, or even set it for a particular time to run at a particular time. Maybe at the end of the day, or maybe even
There is you can set up a deadline for that, and if you configure maintenance windows on that collection or on that machine,
Yeah.
It will start in that maintenance window.
Yeah. So and then the other thing is that it depends on the way the software behaves. Because some software you can update them while you're using them, but what it will actually do is it won't apply all the updates till you restart. So it actually won't stop what it's doing. So, but then when next you restart your machine, then it's going to apply the updates that you've installed. So that which is why the best way you're dealing with SCCM stuff is you want to test it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
actually
I
see what it
definitely
is.
did that with a lot of. I did mostly Adobe and Java pushes with my SCCM. So that was as far as I got personally as an administrator was Flash, usually Flash updates and Java updates. So I did a lot of testing, on 1520 machines, and then I'd push out to 1500 after that before we let the, Adobe updater service start running.
Yep. Okay, man. No problems, man. I'll speak to you next week again, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Speak to you later.
Thanks a lot, David. Great
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
No problems. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.